back to everybody sitting online and watching. And I'm really, really happy to introduce Claus Raasted, who is our next guest on stage. But before Claus will join me on stage here, you need to get your phones again for the next engagement question to make sure that everybody stays awake and all that. And the question is actually about staying awake. So what would help you stay awake for the next session? Would it be more coffee? A seat massage function? That would be really, really great. Surprise mariachi band, yeah, that's also interesting, right? Or Claus Raasted with a fog machine. That's also an interesting opportunity, I would say. So let's see what you really want. It's looking good, Claus. It's looking pretty good, I would say, right? It actually looks that, I can fulfill some of the wishes from a large part of the audience. So I would say, we have had a lot of superstars on the stage today, right? But now there's a rock star about to enter the stage. So buckle up, because we're going out with a bang. Our next speaker, it's not your typical consultant. He's a creativity machine, an innovation rebel, and the author of 46 books. That was 46 books. He has worked with everybody from IKEA to the World Economic Forum. And today, he's here to show everybody in this room how to break through the noise, unleash the bold ideas, and with no other way to say it, and I'm sorry to say it now, how to get shit done. So welcome on stage, Claus Raasted.
Can you feel it? Let's be honest, the sunglasses are a bit much. So before we do anything else, before we talk about getting shit done, I'm just going to do a small thing. Where did Bo go? Bo, I need you to come with me. Come with me.
Where are you going?
Bo, hvis du bare stiller dig der, så skal jeg nok hente dig om et øjeblik.
Outside.
I also do hosting, by the way.
Hey.
So now we got rid of Bo. But we're going to get him back in a moment. So doing this sort of conference is sometimes a little bit of a thankful job. And it's actually underestimated how stressful it is to be a moderator. Because whenever something goes wrong, you will get these like small notes saying, the lunch is on fire. Can you stall them for 30 minutes while we find out something? You're, yeah, sure I can. So people always see the moderators. They never really get enough praise. And I know you've seen Bo on stage, you're going to clap him, but we're going to give him a little something extra. So in a moment, I'm going to invite him back in here. And when he gets on stage, not when he enters the door, but when he gets on stage, I want you to forget all about Experian. I want you to forget all about business and AI. You're at the Raasted Festival, and Megadeth is about to go on stage. And for those of you who are very young or have no music culture, Megadeth was cool in the 90s when I went to the Raasted Festival. So the moment Bo hits the stage, I want you out of your chairs. I want you to go absolutely fucking wild. No throwing stuff. They're not that cool. But yells, screaming, clapping, go nuts, okay? Yes. But the moment he hits there, nobody springs the surprise. He needs to hit the stage, okay? Good. And Bo is right now thinking, what did I sign up for? No, come in again, Bo.
No, tak.
Follow me, Bo.
I need to follow you. Okay, yeah.
One of your unsung heroes, Bo Rasmussen!
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bo.
I can leave again?
Seat. Grab a seat. See? Now, first of all, the mind does not understand the difference between an engineered experience. We heard Celia talking about social engineering, not in a pleasant way, but the mind does not understand the difference between a genuine, authentic experience and an engineered one. So Bo, who of course always expects this sort of welcome, finally got what he deserved. The only problem, he's now going to get used to it and say, yeah, where's the applause next time he shows up at the office on Monday? But it means that we do not care up here whether people do something on purpose or they just feel like it. We have all sorts of rationalizations, but if we don't know, the mind reacts the same. And that means we can decide to engineer behavior, and that behavior helps us get shit done. So the first question for all of you, and I want you to be honest and look yourself in the eye, metaphorically speaking, it's kind of hard to do practically, is when somebody comes to you with a new idea and say, I have an idea, how often do you react like that? Thank you, those people who laugh. You have self-reflection. Appreciate it. The reality is that most of us, when people come with ideas, especially when we're stressed, especially when we're tired, especially when there's not enough budget or there's deadlines or we need to get the pitch finished for the client, whatever, and somebody says, I have an idea, then usually the reaction is shut up or no, or that could never work, or why, because we tend to think that people with ideas are like kids with ideas. I have a 7-year-old daughter. When she comes and says, I have an idea, I'll be honest, sometimes the temptation is to go, what is it now? But the reality is that one of the things we try to train her in, and I try to train people in companies, is the moment somebody says, I have an idea, the first response should always be, tell me more. How awesome. You don't have to do it. That's very different. If I come and say, I think you should raise the salaries of everybody in your companies to 3x, then you can say, thank you for that idea, Claus. And then you can secretly think, you're an idiot. That's okay. But the first key to getting shit done is to treat new ideas with respect and love and kindness, even if you're not going to do them. Tip number 1. The second thing is, question here, how many of you are familiar with the Chinese concept of 996? Few. For the rest of you, there are 2 essential ways to get more things done. One is 996 is excellent. It's working from 9 in the morning till 9 in the evening, 6 days a week. That's 72 hours of work per week. If you just work harder, you will get more done. However, if you don't want to do that, then innovation is rather critical. And it says something somewhere about innovation summit here, somewhere around there. So you're kind of in that mindset, right? So if we are not prepared to just work harder, because then we'll be competing against Chinese factories and they are hard to beat anyway, then you need to work differently. And that starts by saying, you have an idea, let's hear it. Lovely, tell us more. Instead of saying, oh no, shut up, be quiet, put your hand down. Number 1. Number 2, so where should you look? Let's say you have an idea. Let's say you want to change something. Should you look at the big stuff or the small stuff? Or where should you innovate? Well, there are 2 key places where innovation is outsized or has outsized effects. One of them is if you look at the tiny, tiny details, the stuff we never bother to look at, the stuff about, oh, maybe we should look at the color of the font or the buttons on the website or the page 3 of the onboarding material. Because usually when somebody says, I have an idea for something that is small, we say, oh, we don't have time for small stuff. And if they say something that's big, they say, whoa, 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 whoa. That's too big for us. And the 2 best places to look are often in the tiny things, they don't even have to cost a lot, or in the huge things. How many of you are familiar with the story of the $300 million button? When you're done, Google it. $300 million button. It is a button on a website that changed revenue by $300 million the year after. One button. I know developers are expensive, but still. McDonald's did a brilliant thing some decades ago. They trained all their frontline personnel to ask a simple question. Do you want fries with that? Basically, whenever a customer was buying something, whether it was a Big Mac or a Mc salad, they didn't have salads then, let's not kid ourselves, but whatever they were buying, the frontline staff were trained to ask, do you want to buy a little bit extra? Do you want it supersized? Do you want fries with that? Do you want a burger as well? Do you want a Happy Meal? Do you think it's sold? Hell yes. One simple piece of training rolled out. Every McDonald's. You want fries with that. Incredibly powerful. Tiny, but incredibly powerful. So the one place to look for innovation is look at the tiny stuff. The stuff that you never bother to look at, because sometimes there you can get outsized returns. The other place to look is to look at the big stuff. The stuff we don't bother about. The stuff that we don't have time for. The stuff that is, what are we even doing? What are we selling? Why are we different? Why should anybody care? And then somebody says, Frank, get back to work. Right? The stuff where we sit down just for half an hour and discuss what the hell is this? I did a culture workshop a couple of years back with the Copenhagen police force, and I had these 50 middle managers, and I will tell you, you are a lovely audience. Some of them, they started like this. And at some point, I give them a task. I say, I want you to go out with 2 colleagues that you don't know that well, walk the streets of Copenhagen for half an hour, and talk about one simple question. What does it mean to be a good police officer? That's the task. 2 interesting things happened. One is there's a young guy who stands up and says, I think that seems like a waste of time because I guess we all agree what that means. Luckily for me, some colleagues looked at him and said, I don't think we do. And then he says, oh, then I guess it's a good idea. Sorry, I withdraw my objection. Points to him. That was the first thing that happened. Then another guy, a guy I considered an ally in the room, Jan, been in the force for about 30 years, says, well, Claus, we've done that before. I say, okay, maybe I'm wrong. When was the last time? How often do you do this? Maybe you do this every Tuesday. You have like the half hour where you discuss the big picture. And then he's thoughtful, looks a little bit, draws it out. Got a good sense of drama, Jan. There's 50 eyes, 50 pairs of eyes, 100 eyes in total looking at him. And they're thinking, what's he going to answer? And so am I. And Jan says, well, last time, I think it was 10 or 12 years ago. If we never look at the details will stay the same. We'll stay with the same chairs, the same welcome, the same font, the same ideas, the same small, tiny details that can matter if we never look at them. If we never look at the big stuff, then we're going to get left behind. What do we sell? Husqvarna, 325-year-old anniversary. They had that recently. What does Husqvarna do? How many of you have a Husqvarna lawnmower or something like that? Yes, some proud hands. Husqvarna, they started as a rifle factory. If you don't sometimes look at the big picture, it is hard to reinvent who you are. And if you never reinvent who you are, then you're going to end up behind. We see it right now. AI? Do we talk about AI? Imagine if people said, oh, we don't have time to talk about AI. It's too big. We're busy with the proposal. Okay, fair enough. But if you never do it, you're going to get left behind. So number 2 is look at the small stuff. Look at the big stuff. And take the time for each, even though it's tempting to say, we don't have time for the big stuff, that's too big, and the small stuff we can't care about because that's too small. You know what happens then? No innovation. Very simple. Tip 2. For tip 3, I'm going to use a chair. We'll get to that chair. I'm going to use another chair. This is Bjarne Corydon's chair. He warmed it for me earlier. Bjarne talked about the burning platform. It's a concept not invented by, but like coined by consultancy in the 1980s. You need a burning platform or no innovation will happen. Bjarne is right. Innovation happens when the ship is on fire. When you get told you have 6 months left to live unless you change your diet, most of us change our diet. When you find out, oh, we can't fly. Revenue's down by 98%. Hello, Copenhagen Airport 5 years ago. Maybe we should rethink some things. Corona, we've all lived through it. You're all old enough to have been of the working class during that pandemic. You've all been here or at least most of you have. Because here, innovation happens. Here, things can be done in days that used to take months. Here are things like, what if we did something different, Klaus? Yeah, let's try it, because if not, we're going to fall over a cliff. When we are desperate, we innovate. How many of you have kids? How many of you are not sure? Good. There's usually from that, there's some knowing laughter from women and some very nervous laughter from men. So I'm glad you're an average audience there. So I have a 7-year-old, as mentioned, and when she was small, you know when you have kids and you're like, if both parties take equal amounts of work, they're both zombies and nothing helps, so you like look at each other and hope the other one will blink and say, I'll take the nights. I blinked and I took the nights. And that meant that she was sort of like a human while I was very much not a human. It also meant that I tried to come up with ideas, even tiny ones, on how to kind of multitask with that small screaming pile of humanity that is my daughter. She's a little bit less screaming now, right? And one of the things I did was I went out to one of these sporting goods stores, like an outdoor store, a Spider Sport, I think it was. And then I bought a tripod. And normally you hang, on a tripod, you hang like not a bowl, like a kettle thing under the pot over a fire, and you use it to cook meals in the wild. It's very beautiful. I hung Saga's crib under that in the chain. Sue did not feel it fit the aesthetic of our living room. I said it did not, but I didn't care. So I put that up, and then I could sit and I could rock it with my foot while I was reading. And I found out that was actually surprising hard work. So then I tied a string to my big toe, and I could sit there and just flip my toe to rock Saga's crib. If that's not innovation, what the hell is? And it was born out of desperation, because when you are here, you innovate. We heard earlier, we heard Cecilia talking about being defrauded for 200,000 pounds, something like that. That's a shitload of money. I'm stupid. She wasn't. She got abused, right? I was just stupid enough to run my company into the ground and borrow a lot of money because I thought I could make it work, and I ended up with a little under €1 million of personal debt. I did that. Nobody did that to me. And that was also a learning experience. I had to learn how to make money so I could start climbing out of debt. Before that, I had no clue. I learned how to do that from that. It was painful, but it was a hell of a learning experience. I'm not saying you should do that, and I think if I just done it for $500,000, I might still have learned something. So desperation, we all agree, I hope, desperation breeds innovation. And you can choose to be desperate. You can choose to set a deadline. You can choose to promise, we are launching tomorrow. Desperation has just one problem. It is exhausting as hell. It's effective. It's Cortez burning the ships when his men arrive in Central America, and he says, we're not going home unless we are victorious. And they would say, what do you mean? I said, you see the ships we came in? They're on fire. Okay. It worked. Desperate? Yes. Exhausting? Yes. That's Bjarne's chair. It works. There's also another chair. That's the comfy chair, the nice chair, the sleeve chair instead of the suit chair, right? This is when you've got enough. This is when you're floating in money or time or energy. This is when you are Zoom during the pandemic. This is when somebody comes to you and says, hey, we just tripled our revenue without doing anything. What shall we do? Let's experiment. If I came to you tomorrow, or today, let's just take today. I came to you today and say, I'd like to give you 1,000 kroner per person to go out into Copenhagen and have a good dinner. Then you'd go out, find an expensive restaurant, and have a good dinner. If I gave you 100 kroner and say, go out and get dinner, you'd go out and get a significantly cheaper place. Copenhagen is expensive. It might be a pølsevogn or a hot dog or something like that, but you'd still get dinner. If I gave you 10 kroner, you'd start getting sneaky if you wanted to eat, because 10 kroner doesn't buy a lot in Copenhagen. If I gave you 10,000, you'd all say, where is this MoMA place? But if I gave you 1,000,000 kroner and said, this is for dinner tonight and anything you don't spend is done, then you would start stacking champagne. You would go to a McDonald's and say, hey, if I just give you 100,000, will you take burgers and start throwing them into street at random strangers? Let's try something new. You would use it on all sorts of shenanigans because you would have enough. In our private lives, it's that annoying couple, right? You know them, they're in their 40s, they're in good shape, they have 4 kids, they still love each other, and they're like, oh, but on Thursdays, me and Carsten have started tango dancing because we need to have a little bit of adventure. And you're just thinking, can I get through the week? Because they have abundance, because they have enough. And we all know that when we have enough, when we have surplus, when we feel that we're comfortable, then we start innovating. If you take 1 week off, I'm not saying if you hate your job, then you're just going to go and watch some Netflix. But if you really like your job, whether you're an entrepreneur or work for a big company, if you really like your job and you get told you have a week with no responsibility, then first you're going to sit down and go like, oh. And then you're going to sit around a little bit and go, oh. And then you're going to scroll Instagram, and then you're going to check your mail, and then somebody say, no, you've got a week off. Then you're going to say, oh, yeah, I do. And then you're going to think of, maybe that onboarding process for our salespeople that I wanted to change 5 years ago, I should do that now. Maybe I should look at the layout of the office. Maybe I should look at how we deal with people we are sending off. Maybe we should, maybe. Because ideas grow, and then you actually have time to work on them because you have enough, right? There's the nice chair, and there's the honest chair. They're both effective. The problem is you can't just decide to be in the nice chair. You can't just wake up in the morning and say, I'm now going to be a person of abundance. You can say it doesn't really work. You can say, I'm going to be desperate. You can choose desperation, and self-chosen desperation is quite effective. But the really interesting thing is that if you have a team or your own life, you can stack these things. You can change them around. There's a woman I was coaching some years back, and she actually has a tip in the book, and she says, on Mondays, I eat frogs. She found out that she's a hardcore creative, and she found out that every day she would do a couple of hours of admin work that she hated, and then she would do the creative work, but she would be kind of exhausted. So then she said, I'm now going to create Mondays, and Mondays are for all the shit work. And then she would work 12, 14, 15 hours each Monday, and then the rest of the week would feel peaceful, and she could do all her creativity. So she would take Monday and say, Monday is desperation day. And because she put all the stuff here, it meant that the rest of the week was days of abundance. Because if you don't do this, if you don't find either abundance, even in pockets, or desperation, then you end up right here in the middle. And in the middle is the Slavic squat. I learned this from my Polish employees. It's not because they don't work there. Because there you can sit for a long time, but nothing happens. And this is what leads to things like, oh, that's a great idea, but not right now. Maybe in Q4. And it turns out that things that can't be done when we're here in the middle, when we end up there, then we're willing to try. If we end up there, hell yeah, let's try that. We can't sell remotely. Remember that one? You can't lead remotely. You can't build teams remotely. And then we were here, and suddenly we could. Tip number 3, don't end up between the chairs. But let's say you buy into this, right? Let's say you understand you need to create pockets of desperation or pockets of abundance. Let's say that you get the idea that look at the small stuff or the big stuff. Let's say you even accept that when somebody has an idea, you say, tell me more. Where do you go looking? What do you do to get inspired? Something unusual, maybe. Now, you could, of course, go to something like this. It's a really good idea. Inspiration. You could also hire an overpriced rock star consultant. Right? That's also an option. Or just if you can't afford that, take the book that's on the thing. But that's okay. But what else could you do? Well, go looking in places where you don't normally look, because the trick about inspiration is that we tend to have pretty narrow ideas of where it should come from. During that pandemic, There was an interview I saw on CNN that chilled me to the bone, and it was with the mayor of Las Vegas, who had just reopened the restaurants there, and CNN star journalist Anderson Cooper. And Anderson Cooper asked the mayor of Las Vegas, this very American woman, maybe 70, something like that, and she's very ha 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 ha, and says, well, since you're reopening things, like, aren't you afraid people will die? And she says, well, yeah, but we have to, business and Las Vegas. And he says, okay, but since you're now doing that, are you at least taking some learnings from elsewhere? For example, there have been some interesting learnings from Vietnamese restaurants that have learned that if you air out the thing and rotate the tables and all the sort of stuff we learned to do, that then you can keep the contagion to a minimum, even if you have things open. And what does she answer? Does she say, oh, that's brilliant, we'll look into that? She says, oh, Anderson, this is America, this isn't Vietnam. And we laugh at that. Thank you. But the reality is, we're just as bad. If I come to you and say, hey, I work with this amazing startup. They found a new way to work with risk mitigation. Do you want me to hook you up with them so they can share some ideas? They're from Switzerland. You'll say, okay, sounds reasonable. If I say, hey, I work with this amazing startup. They're from Bulgaria. Then some will say, yeah, well. And if I, hey, it's this amazing Nigerian startup. They work with risk mitigation. And we haven't heard the idea yet. And if you want a more clear example, I lived in the US for a couple of years when I was a kid, and it gave me this sort of American accent. But I could also go full Uffe Ellemann, which is our former foreign minister in the early 90s. And Uffe Ellemann, he had a strong Danish accent. And I can tell you, the Danish accent, it is very clear. It is actually one of the best accents in the world for being understood. It is also quite hard to take seriously. And when you are an overpaid international rockstar consultant who does keynote speeches, then this is not the voice of 10,000 euros. This is the voice of 10,000 euros. It's the same words. It's where it comes from. Is an idea worse because it's from My Little Pony? No. In the book, I quote Assassin's Creed, the computer game. Okay, nobody laughed at yet. You have no gaming culture. It's okay. It's okay. Fair enough. We'll get you there. But when you get ideas, if you can go places where you don't normally look, go to an astrology conference, talk to somebody who's in construction, talk to somebody who's different, somebody where you think, first of all, holy shit, what could I learn from them? Because that's exactly where the good stuff comes from, is from the unexpected places. Go to things like this, of course. It's amazing Experian to put this on. Do things like this. Go to industry events. Get inspired. Hire consultants. But go outside and meet people where you think, what do they have to teach me? Because they just might have that magical thing. Because you can be damn sure that if you go to an astrology conference to learn about risk mitigation, you won't meet your colleagues there. And you won't meet your competitors either. And everything in this world that we have, from those screens to the floor, to the internet, to democracy, to feminism, to running water, all the good stuff, started the same way. Started with somebody saying, couldn't the world be different? And somebody else said, it will never work. And if you go to places and are the person asking that, then you might just make it work. But that leads to the final thing. And for this, I need your help. Because the final thing is that as humans, the thing we're most afraid of, it's not pain, it's not death. It's looking like idiots. And the problem with idiots is that the only difference between a visionary and an idiot is history. They look the same. And if you're not willing to look like an idiot, then you have a problem. And I'm going to demonstrate by taking my shirt here and folding it into an improvised basketball. Because some years back, a couple of researchers from one of the American universities, not one of the famous ones, but one of the less famous ones, found out that if you throw a basketball, like the basketball penalty shoot where you like whoosh, that's what most players do. If you instead throw it like this, it's more accurate because it's only one movement. And then they tested that. Findings were clear. And they took it to some NBA players. What did they say? Shaquille O'Neal, famous American, 8 meters tall NBA player, was the one who was most honest about it. They said, why don't you use this? It works better. He says, yeah. But don't you want to win games? What if that's the one point? Said, yeah. Said, but you're still not doing it. I don't want to look like a grandma. If you're not willing to look like an idiot, somebody else will. And everything starts with somebody looking like an idiot. So we're going to end up today with a crucial point, and I need you all to stand up here. Because the crucial point about idiots is that idiocy and looking like an idiot is contextual. If one person does something, one guy in a Batman suit looks like an idiot. Everybody in a Batman suit, now it's the one in the dark, elegant suit from Hermes that looks like the idiot. So we're going to demonstrate in practice here, and for this I need your help, and if you don't help, it's going to fall completely flat, and that's okay, I'll forgive you for it. But I need you to choose in your mind, are you more of a gorilla or a chimpanzee? Good. Now you've chosen. Then I want you to turn to the person next to you, and when I do a countdown of 3, 2, 1, I want you to go full-on monkey. And the first person who laughs in your duel has been defeated and must sit down. This is called unleashing the monkey war. Are you ready? Turn to the person next to you. 3, 2, 1, unleash the monkeys! And thank you! That was it. We're done. Over to Bo.
Thank you so much, Claus. That was a perfect ending to the Experian Innovation Summit. Thank you so much.